welcome to Cabinet on the 10th of September. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies this morning for Councillor Ellison and Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. I wish to make an announcement. Officers and members are aware that our colleague and friend, Councillor Hannah Edwards, died last Wednesday. I think it right and proper that this, the first formal council meeting since her death, marks her passing. Hannah was a great advocate for her residents in Oakham, and her fresh approach to being a councillor brought significant benefits to people of Rutland as a whole. Can I therefore ask you all, if you can, to stand for a minute's silence, a mark of respect. Thank you. Do we have any announcements, please, from the service?
None, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. Minutes. We have before us the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, the 13th of August. Can I have a proposal that these are a true and accurate record? Thank you, Councillor Wise. I saw Councillor Chisholm stay. All in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Do we have any items raised by scrutiny?
On receive this meeting.
Thank you. We move on to item 6, the Rutland Local Plan Regulation 19 consultation. That's report number 93, 2020. Can I ask Councillor Brown to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. This is a significant stage of our emerging local plan and represents this Council's efforts in finalising the analysis of options that have come forward following our extensive Regulation 18 consultation. It will govern our planning policy until 2041. Once this has been forwarded to Council and hopefully agreed in September, and as it further progresses through its statutory procedures, it gains increasing weight in structuring the planning decisions that have come before this Council. And so on many diverse policies that are contained in the 276 pages of this report, and it will have a marked effect on the future of this county. The importance of it is not only in the spatial nominations, it is also in all those other distinctive and very important policies that are contained in it. Following it going to Council and on the basis of it gets approved, this will then go for further consultation for 6 weeks, straddling October, December of this year. And this will allow for further representations to be made by those interested in the document itself. I'd like to emphasize to all those who are now listening in that this is not a rerun of the Regulation 18 consultation, which invited views, opinions, counter-views and suggestions. The emerging local plan as it is now has taken into account those 3,400 plus points raised in that Regulation 18 exercise and distilled the same into the document now before us. This consultation is now limited to consideration as to whether this current version is, in the minds of those responding consultees, sound or unsound. The stage for suggesting that alternatives was only at Regulation 18 itself, and that has now passed. It should also be noted that we have held a full briefing in last week's parish councillors meeting. They have been given full details of of the contents and the problems that have arisen. This will enable them to have a knowledge of these developments, enabling them to have that further time in those 6 weeks to consider the same in full. Lastly, it has been published now in full on our website. This stage is therefore part of the statutory process we have to comply with. It has been long and a very costly experience, which in conclusion will fundamentally change and redirect large tracts of policies from those in our now well out of date existing local plan. I'm aware that there is this government consultation now going on ahead on the new NPPF, which was launched on the 30th of July, and the consultation period of which will end on the 24th of September. It is anticipated that by Christmas we will have the government's response to that consultation. There are so many differentials between what has initially been proposed and what we expect will finally arrive after that process of consultation, that I don't think it would be beneficial for us to go into those potential conflicts at this stage. We really have to wait to see what the results of the government's new plan actually is before we can really look to see how we can challenge this, or if we need to challenge it at all. I would also like to express my thanks to our officials who have been involved in all these stages of presentation, but not least to say the 3,400 recent results of the Regulation 18. Not an easy thing to do, especially when you've replied to all of them on the website. So I'd like that to be extended if I can. I therefore have pleasure in moving that the recommendations before you are now approved by this Cabinet for submitting to Council.
Thank you. Microphone, please. The recommendations are that Cabinet agrees the following for consideration by Council. 1. Approve the pre-submission local plan Regulation 19 publication version with the policies map so that it can be published for its statutory 6-week stage. 2. Agree the local plan to be submitted, Regulation 22, to Government for its independent examination in public unless any unforeseen and significant issues arise post-publication that would require reconsideration of the local plan. It is proposed that any non-material minor amendments, such as typographical, mapping, formatting, desktop publishing and design of the local plan deemed necessary before the local plan is submitted and during the examination period, will be delegated to and made by the Strategic Director of Places in consultation with the local plan lead cabinet portfolio holder. 3, agree that the strategic director of places, in consultation with the local plan lead cabinet portfolio holder, be authorised to request that the local plan inspector recommends any main modifications to the submission version of the plan, if necessary, in order for the plan to be legally compliant and found sound in accordance with section 20 brackets 7c brackets of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. And 4, following this, that the same delegated authority is given for making any main and additional modifications as part of the examination process and undertaking consultation on any such main modifications and consequential changes to the submission version of the local plan, so that a post-examination adoption version can be finalised in advance of taking the local plan back to full council for approval to be adopted. This has been proposed by Councillor Brown. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Johnson, thank you. In which case I now throw open to debate. Councillor Wise.
I think it's fair to say there are a large number of policies that sit behind this local plan, many of them referred to in the local plan. We know that some of those need updated, and I think there are in fact some new ones required. I think it's appropriate to mention that we will be continuing to work on those plans whilst the local plan is going through its process. In many ways, it's those policies that do the work. The local plan simply connects them together as a sort of narrative, in my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know that the situation around the new NPPF that the government is proposing and how this would relate to this stage of the local plan.
Thank you. I think I'll ask Director, Mrs. Sharp, would you please respond to that, given that we don't really know anything?
Yeah, so the consultation is open, and there is an intention to bring a report to the next cabinet meeting that will discuss how we would look to proceed in light of the consultation that's currently government's currently undertaking on the National Planning Policy Framework. The advice is that, given the stage that we are at with our local plan, that we can be considered for transition arrangements. So what that means is that we can go forwards with this Reg 19 plan with a sort of a limited time window to be able to do that. So it is important that it's agreed in terms of going into the next stage for now, to enable us to meet those transition thresholds and criteria. What that would enable us to do is move forwards with this current local plan and the housing targets that are associated with this plan, so the 123 that we've got in this plan, whilst we then would look, subject to the report that comes to Cabinet next time, to develop essentially a review of the current local plan, to take account of new housing targets that are out for consultation at the moment. If those housing targets are confirmed, that would see over a doubling of our housing numbers, and certainly would need to be, we will need to look at that in terms of the new revised local plan. So, as I say, the report that comes next time around will make that clear in terms of our understanding of the proposals around the National Planning Policy Framework, the implications of that increased housing target, and what that might mean for how we move forwards in terms of essentially a new spatial plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Sharp. Do you have anything further you want to ask? Anything else? No. I think it's really important that we do complete this process, because whatever is in the National planning policy framework that the government ultimately publishes won't negate an awful lot of the work we've done on the policies that Councillor Wise mentioned. We know what the government's intent is, and the detail of much of what we've done isn't part of that intent. So that does need to go forward. It's worth remembering that we started this process in the autumn of 2021. It takes a long time to get a local plan to the point we're in, and if we falter now, we'll find ourselves having to start from the beginning, which I don't think any of us would want. I said that we know what the government's broad intent is, and we do. But like a lot of these things, the devil is always in the detail. And I know that we, in our response, are pointing out some of the anomalies that, well, we think they're anomalies from the broad brush approach that the government's taking. I also know from having seen the first draft of the Rural Services Network's response on this that they also have some concerns about the possibly unintended consequences of the policy. And indeed, the national parks in the country are also questioning, and all of that makes me think that there will be some changes in what we see ultimately, maybe not what we want as an individual local authority, but nevertheless, I don't think what was put forward as consultation will necessarily be realised in the final document. And so it's absolutely right that we carry on as we are, cognizant of what's going on nationally, but not a slave to it. That would be my view. Mr. Brown, do you have any final comments you would wish to make?
No, I think you summed it up quite well. It is essential that we keep this process going. It looks as though the two exemptions to allow us to continue on our existing trajectory are going to be covered. That will enable this policy to go forward. It will be a peculiar situation if we develop a local housing need that is in excess of that figure, and that is something the government will have to consider how they're going to, what approach they're going to give to that, because it'll certainly cause confusion. If the confusion continues, and we don't want to put ourselves into being a vulnerable position to developers that happened before. So we do really hope that the government looks at what we have done. It is the local plan is basically and should be led by evidential means, not by knee-jerk reactions to political ambitions. So one hopes that that would be considered as the nuances, the aspects that, as the leader says, of, you know, be careful what you wish for, are looked into in great depth, and that we get some more comprehensive and more relevant proposals coming through with the new NPPF.
Thank you. Well, this has been proposed and seconded. There was rather a lot in our recommendations for this, so if you're content, I won't read them out again. They have been read out. They are on the paper that's publicly available. And so all those in favour of all the recommendations?
That's unanimous, Chair. It's carried.
Thank you. All right. We're moving on now. Items 8 and 9 both include confidential annexes. I would, however, like to discuss as far as possible the papers in public. The covering reports are public documents. So as we deal with them, can I ask members of Cabinet that if you do want to discuss the confidential matters, that you make that absolutely clear before you speak so that we can go into private session. Otherwise, we will remain in public. Thank you. So we move, therefore, to item number 8, the Local Council Tax Support Review. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Local Council Tax Support Review item, and what it does is request approval to undertake a review of the Council Tax Support Scheme and the associated discretionary fund. The recommendations are at 1.2, and the reasons for the recommendations are that we need to change our system, which was last changed in 2013. And the system we're proposing is going to a self-service banded scheme that will allow more self-service by residents and will also allow officers to make sure they're able to support the people that need to be supported. The background is that the government abolished the council tax benefit from the 1st of April 2013, and we then had a system in from January 13, which allowed us to assess council tax support. Since then, changes to universal credit and other ways that benefits are paid has meant that the data that we're relying on has changed, and we need to change the way we collect and assess data. So there is an example of the consultation in the pack, and the council proposes to have a consultation as part of this review, and out of the review will come final recommendations for a scheme and a system to administer the council tax support scheme. It's worth pointing out that the scheme is a banded scheme, and as with any banded scheme, which runs in blocks, not a continuous line, there will be differences between one band to another, and therefore there will be slight changes in obligation or savings depending on where people find themselves in the middle of a band or not. And doing this review will allow us to understand more about the effect of that, which I think is important for us to understand the risks, both to the council and to individual residents. So I'd like to move that we approve the paper and approve the review.
Thank you. The recommendations are: 1, approves the review of the Council Tax Reduction Scheme, currently known as Local Council Tax Support, LCTS, and the associated discretionary fund, DF, with the aim of moving to a modern, cost-effective banded scheme for working age households from the 1st of April 2025 onwards. 2, approves the launch of a public consultation from 11th of September 24 to 20th of November 2024, that's 10 weeks, to inform the content of the final council tax reduction scheme policy, and approves the consultation content detailed at Appendix B. Councillor Johnson's proposed. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown. I therefore move to debate. Any comments, questions? Councillor Wise.
Can I just ask, is this totally an online system? I had a feeling that we were encouraging people to move online, but that wouldn't be the only way of accessing it. Am I correct?
Councillor Johnson.
The purpose of the review is to test whether or not we should be moving to an online scheme. We would ideally like to work to an online scheme, but this will teach us about how people want to be assessed and helped.
Can I ask as a follow-up to that then, the survey that we are producing, is that going to be only online? Perhaps Mrs. Nutton might be able to answer that.
No, it won't be online due to the equality, so we will make sure that access is available for all consultees.
Sorry, could you explain that? So will you be sending it to every household in Rutland, or how's it going to be done?
I do not know the exact details, but it would be in line with the way we usually consult with impacted parties and our residents at large.
I think we need to pay some attention to how we're communicating the, if we approve this, the I'm trying to not say survey, but I can't think of a better word, the actual consultation. But also, more importantly, if we move ahead with this, that we do have a method for people who either aren't online or have difficulty using computers for other reasons, whatever they might be, that they are not stopped from making applications ultimately. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is actually covered in page 657 of the pack, where it says, how can I participate, which is in the public consultation document. So it says you can complete an online form here. This is the easiest and quickest way to respond. Alternatively, you can print a paper version of the form here and send this back to us. If you can't print the form, you can call us and we can send a paper version to you. If you can't complete the form yourself, you can ask a relative or friend to help you. Alternatively, you can call us on this number and we can assist you.
Yeah. And what happens if they haven't got access to the internet to read all that stuff that comes with the form? That's the point I'm making. I mean, it's not so much the consultation, but the actual application. We need to find ways that people can apply that don't require them to go on a computer in the first place to find out. Now, it may be that the new communities hubs that we're setting up might be the vehicle through which we do that, and that would be logical, clearly, and Councillor Wise is nodding as the portfolio holder responsible, but we need to build that into any system so it's clear to everybody. Councillor Wise.
The community hubs won't be in place this autumn to help with the consultation. It might be we need to engage with some voluntary organisations to help us get the papers out there. At this stage, for example, we have a couple of age concern charity shops who may have paper versions of the consultation for people to collect. We might ask Age Concern to print some out for people coming into the shops. I think we need to work with the voluntary organisations here rather than necessarily think we can get them all out there ourselves.
That's a very good point, and we also do work with Citizens Advice Rutland to communicate with our voluntary organisations, and they may well be a good mechanism for doing that. So yes, in terms of the consultation, that is. Thank you. We've been proposed and seconded. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you. Right, we move on to item 9. Item number 9, which is the low-income household project. Now, I think we may well have quite a bit of discussion on this particular item. Can I again remind you all, please, that if you want to discuss anything in Appendix A, which is the exempt part, that you make that clear before you say anything so that we can go into exempt. I'm going to ask Councillor Johnson to introduce this in a moment, but I think the thing we all need to bear in mind that this is one of the projects that's been brought forward in response to our corporate strategy, specifically supporting the most vulnerable. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the low-income household project, and this report requests approval to undertake a low-income household project using using the low-income family tracker and a better off calculator and additional recruitment to a new fixed-term temporary role to enable office to identify and support households to access unclaimed benefits within the county to support residents with their cost of living. The recommendations are at 1.2, which is to approve the funding of the low-income family tracker and approves the use of the Process Improvement Fund to fund the project. The reason for the recommendation is that there are totally, in total 5 million unclaimed benefits in Rutland. The use of the LIFT platform and a special better off calculator will enable officers to bring together a monthly database to analyse and interrogate data which will allow them to target residents which are in need. The use of the LIFT platform enables us to be proactive in understanding and calculating those households that need support rather than being reactive, which is the case at the moment where households come to us. So that's the main difference with this project. We have a tracker which can be used to identify households before they reach crisis point, and this will help with homelessness prevention, we hope, and also help to reduce the use of a temporary accommodation and its costs associated with budget. The Better Off calculator also contains DWP data, so it is different to the publicly accessible Better Off calculator, and this will be run in conjunction with the LIFT platform to ensure that we can assess households and proactively go to them and try to help them with their issues. There are case studies that are quoted there in paragraph 2, 213, 214 of projects that have been similarly successful in this area. And what we're being asked to do is to support the procurement of LIFT and the Better Off calculator and provide funding for one full-time resource for 2 years to enable officers to understand the effect of doing this and understand the effect of targeting support to low-income households. The options that we have are to do nothing or to do this, really. We believe that this is a better way of helping households within Rutland target benefits. We believe that if we can get a yield on the £5 million worth of unclaimed benefits that currently exist, then we will both be helping households as well as helping the council cope with its requirements at lower cost. There are details of the costs involved in the paper. The expenditure involved over 4 years is £130,000. Obviously, the effectiveness of this proposal will be assessed as it goes along to ensure that we are getting value for money and to ensure that it is an effective way of helping potential claimants claim the monies that they are due. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you proposing the recommendations?
Sorry, I apologise. Yes, I'd like to move the recommendations.
Thank you. I do like to be accurate in these things. Right, the recommendations are, number 1, approves the funding of the low-income family tracker LIFT, an online benefits calculator, and an additional resource to enable officers to target support to low-income households. And 2, approves the use of the Process Improvement Fund to fund this project over the medium-term financial strategy period as outlined in section 3.1. And for the benefit of those listening, when we talk about in number 1 additional resource, that's staffing resource. It's been proposed. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wise, thank you. I can now open to debate. Councillor Wise.
I think this very neatly links to the previous paper. We have had raised with us the low uptake of the council tax reduction scheme, and this may well is a way of highlighting the people who aren't applying, which in a way actually costs us money because we then have to give them a reduction in their council tax. But I think it shows how these policies are linked. I think we also need to bear in mind that nationally we know a low family income leads to a number of difficult outcomes for those families, not just homelessness, but a number of other things affecting education and special educational needs and so on. And so there is potentially, if we can increase incomes, a knock-on effect for social care. But I think it would be almost impossible to prove.
Thank you. Anything from anyone else? I've got a couple of questions. I also would like to make a comment as well. And that is that we know Rutland is a high cost area. Cost of housing is high. The cost of getting about is high because we have limited public transport. So a lot of our residents in rural areas are reliant on personal transport. And our wages, or the wages that are paid within Rutland, which is different from that paid to Rutland residents because obviously many commute, but the wages within Rutland are low. And I think we have to recognise that a lot of these benefits are actually going to people in work. It's not the often lauded in the press, the people who can't be bothered to work, who are living on the state. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about hard-working citizens who are struggling to make ends meet. And anything that we can do to help them claim the benefits to which they are entitled should be applauded. That's my statement. My question, though, is this, and I'm going to address it to the director because I want a clear answer, please. I understand that the recommendation is that we fund the LIFT programme, but in the report it refers in paragraph 2.1.2 to a better off calculator for residents to use. Well, I understand that an element of LIFT is the cost of this, or at least the license for it. But there are calculators out there. Government promotes them for individuals to use to work out whether they're entitled to benefits. So how is this better off calculator different, and could we have LIFT without it, please?
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, the details are in Appendix 1 in terms of the cost breakdown. We have recommended that they come together as a package. We have spoken to the providers and it was recommended to put them together, and it provides another avenue for residents to help themselves via our own services and website, presumably as they are listed separately in Appendix A. There is a choice whether to take on the better off calculator. In terms of how different is this to the one available on government, I haven't done the analysis, so I would not know, but we could find that out.
Thank you. I am loath to spend anything at all, given the parlous state of our finances, if we don't have to. That's my thinking. And if it was necessary to have both to make the LIFT work, that would be one thing. But if it is simply what it says in paragraph 2.1.2, and there are alternatives available, I think that's something Cabinet needs to consider. My second question is, when people are filling these things in, they're quite often quite stressed because they're in difficult financial situation and can make mistakes. Stress leads to mistakes, as we all know. They could very well get the response from the online that they're not entitled to any, when in fact they are. So how are we going, I mean, we know, because we ask them to do it for us, that CAR provide personal advice on these matters. How are we going to ensure that those who are perhaps nervous about using an online tool, or use it and then find that it tells them they're not receipt of anything, but they still think they should be, how are we going to encourage them to use the face-to-face service that's available in Rutland? Sorry, I think the Chief Executive wants to respond to that.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think a few points related to that. So, number one, I think that the project ultimately is aimed at being more proactive, using DWP data. So it's whilst there is an element of self-serve related to it, the actual main thrust of the project is to actually identify proactively individuals who aren't claiming benefits and find a way of targeting them. At the moment, we have a very reactive approach, wait for people to come into crisis and then assess their benefits approach and see whether there's a gap in what they're claiming. We shouldn't wait for people to come into crisis. And actually what we've seen nationally is there's really positive project work using this approach to target that with huge benefits to the community. In terms of overlap with advice that we commission Citizen Advice Rutland to achieve, I think what I point out is, so number one, they're trying to shift into a more proactive way into communities, but there's still a reactive response for people to identify that they're in need and for them to come to them. They also don't just advise on benefits. There's a lot of their work which is well beyond benefits, and this is a focus, a proactive focus just on benefits. Once we run this pilot, there will be an opportunity, I think, for us to review what the contract is that we commission in terms of advice in the community and whether we can learn from this and become more proactive overall. I think that is a huge benefit, but I wouldn't want to recommend any change to the current contract, given its breadth and given that we don't have any learning about how this would work in our own community. I think the final thing I'd say is that this is time limited at the moment, and it should be time limited because, quite rightly, because we have a reactive approach at the moment, there is a significant backlog of probably unclaimed benefits. The question is, we don't have a very transient community. We have, an aging population, and obviously there's some shifts in that population, but it's not a massively transient population. We don't have huge growth in terms of new people coming in. So there's a question, if this is successful, what is the legacy need and requirement and capacity beyond the 2 years? We don't know that answer yet because we haven't undertaken the pilot. I guess finally, what I'd say is that when we were looking at our overall budget, and we're looking at how we look to invest reserves into positive impacts for our community, and we set up this particular fund. This is the type of thing that we said would be of huge benefit. If we wanted to invest in something, we wanted to receive a return. That return is not always cashable. That return is a positive impact to the people living in our community. And £5 million worth of unclaimed benefits is a significant impact on our community. And I'd argue with anyone who thinks that that isn't actually a return on investment from £100,000.
Does anybody want to say any more? Thank you. The Chief Executive's last point is one worth dwelling on for a moment, I think. What is the purpose of local government? Why are we here? Well, we're here to make lives better for people. If we look back in time, far enough, we will remember that waste got thrown out of upstairs windows and left. We collect it now and dispose of it, and people's health is a lot better. If we move forward from medieval times to the Victorian era, local government was investing in pipes to enable water to, maybe not the individual home necessarily, but certainly close to where it was. And it was clean water, and that improved health no end as well. It's not, we're not here necessarily to provide nice things. We are here to provide necessary things to improve the health and well-being of our residents. And being proactive to help people claim benefits to which they are entitled must be a good, even if there is no direct payback to the council, because that's not what it's about. That's my comment. If I don't hear anything from anybody else, all in favour, please.
That's unanimous, Chair. It's carried.
Thank you. Still can't find my last page. Right. I've not been notified of any items of urgent business, and the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 8th of October, and I close the meeting at 5 to 11. Thank you.